All right, first off, morning. Thank you guys for coming out again. I honestly do appreciate y'all showing interest in our program. Saturday night was a great night for our fans in our stadium. Like I said in post game, so much credit to our great fans. You go back and watch that series of events, the way that game ended. I mean, like I had nothing but a smile on my face, just like I was giddy past after the game. I mean, not because of a win, but because of what our fans were capable of doing. And so it just shows how wonderful they are, what they're capable of. Going to implore them to have that same energy, that same excitement to fill the stadium as best they can this Saturday because it makes all the difference. Our players see it, but it also truly made a difference in the outcome of the game. So, again, credit to them, and that was a lot of fun. Still a lot of things to be learned from that game, in all three phases. I didn't think we were in sync and consistent. It was a word I used after the game, and I still going back and watching that film. And then, you look back and still some missed tackles we got to get fixed. Offensively, getting the run game started earlier. And then, special teams, I was not pleased. I thought we played very poorly on special teams. That ultimately comes down to me, our coaching staff, and then, putting the guys in the right position. But two costly penalties, I think we had close to 120 what we call hidden yards that we missed on special teams because of whether it was a return that was called back because of a penalty. But, really, other than, PAT and field goal and our block unit, I didn't think it was a very clean game, special teams wise. So we have to get better at that. That's a third of the game that we've got to find a way to continue to improve upon moving forward. Obviously, great opponent in North Texas coming to town. Know a few of the players down there. Be a great afternoon in the Liberty Bowl in Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. But look, they got one of the top rushing offenses in the country. They got one of the most experienced, I think the number 10 most experienced offensive line in the country. They got a guy that started over 50 games. Four of their five offensive linemen returning starters, so they know how to run the football effectively. And then their linebacker, Katie Davis, is probably the best linebacker I've seen on film. So they've got players. They're going to be hungry coming in here and try to find a way to get it done. But we're focused on this week, trying to go 1-0 and excited to get a week of prep underneath our belt.
You say best on film this season or like overall?
I've seen some good ones, but yeah, he's so far. I mean, he's a very very talented player, and we've faced some good teams already. But yeah, he can fly around, he can move, and he's special.
So for the second half, you guys threw 11 passes, I think, to the run. You're obviously trying to establish the run. Is that kind of a diet you guys want to try to do, or is that something you guys are looking at and saying, hey, we might want to tweak how we try to lean on the run when the pass game is working so well, obviously, in the game?
Yeah, I think anything. I think like we talked about before, I would love ideal balance, right? The 50-50 balance is great. Our first 4 years here, people always forget that I think we ran the ball like 65% of the time. And the question we always got asked, are you running the ball too much? Well, okay, if it works, it works. Part of our run game is, we've got some guys with some speed, but it seems like more we're delivering body blows, and then midway through the third, and that's the way now 3 games in a row, we're seeing the run game start to open up later in the third quarter and then the fourth quarter. The nature of it is we want to be relatively balanced and try to get it going. We're going to see what works for us, right? Seth was having a big game. The receivers, Caden had a big game. But we were able to see some of the lanes start to open up in the run game, and so that's why we stuck with it a little bit more later in the game.
Or are you concerned, though, that if the pass game is working, is that something you're looking at or saying, hey, we do want to establish the run, but maybe we should stick with what's working, especially in a game where Arkansas State couldn't stop the pass?
Yeah, but they're right. They did struggle to stop the pass. The run game was very effective for us later in the game, so I'm not going to look back in a win and say, man, we probably should have passed the ball more when the run game worked. If it wasn't working, we lost the game. Yes, shame on me that we stuck with the run game maybe when it wasn't working. We're going to do whatever we think's best for us to take advantage of, right? If they're now stopping the pass, right, they're got a great coaching staff. They get paid well too. So what they're doing is they saw we were attacking the pass. Well, okay, so now they're dropping in. If they're going to live this with a 4-1 box, we're going to hand the ball off. And part of that's part of the RPO game. We've got a very intelligent quarterback. So if he says, okay, hey, the run game is here, right, and now that safety is dropped out where he's coming in and keeping nosing, he hands the ball off and it gains 15 yards. I'm not going to say, man, we probably could have passed it for 12 yards. So put a lot on that, but I think it showed that it was successful regardless of what the play calling was in the second half.
Speaking of
plays, you found a few plays to get Sutton in there. Was that because of the body blows was running game, or did you kind of go into the game knowing you wanted to get him out there?
I've mentioned Sutton Smith in the summer, and he was a guy that didn't get here till June 1st. And we've been very fortunate to have some great running backs, and I kind of saw some dynamic flashes from him this summer. I said, man, this kid, He's not ready, right? But he's got a chance to continue to develop, and you get to see those in practice. And he's not getting a ton of reps because of, right, the Brandon Thomas, Jay Ducker, Asa Martin. So now, but you get to see some flashes, and you say, okay, this kid's got a chance. And where does it fall into the game? Where was okay? Hey, he's got a chance to see maybe the mid zone concept work a little bit. Okay, hey, this is where the hole may be. Obviously, he made some guys miss, right? Even when it wasn't as well blocked up as it should be, right? He was able to continue to get yards after contact, and so I had confidence. I didn't know it was at this game, but I kind of looked over in the huddle and said, let's put him in, and he proved that he did a nice job, and he's now somebody that maybe we can count on in the mix as well.
What did you see from him recruiting when you were recruiting him? What was the process of finding him recruiting?
Yeah, so Sutton was actually our very first commitment from that class, and I remember he was in town, came on unofficial visit. He FaceTimed me after the unofficial visit that night in the hotel, and he FaceTimed me. He goes, Coach, I'm ready to commit. I said, oh man, you just made my weekend, and just a phenomenal young man. And so the whole recruiting process, but then he continued to get a lot of offers. I mean, he got multiple Power 5 committable offers. In fact, took other official visits, kind of made me, it's one of those, it's like, hey, we're kind of dating, but I'm going to go look. And so he took some other official visits, but he was loyal to us. Our very first commitment had multiple offers. People talked to him about NIL money, all stuff. He said, you know what, Memphis, I came here for the right reason, the right fit. And we kept talking about the type of player he is. And like I said, I'm not calling him Kenny Gainwell, but he's got that unique skill set. If we get to the point once he understands the running back position, maybe he can be that guy that plays a little bit of that slot receiver that can move around. Hey, Tony Pollard, maybe he can now be on some special teams, move in the backfield, put him out slot receiver. Now teams are going to say, well, what do we do? Do we put a safety on? Do we put a linebacker? Is he a running back? And I think that'll allow us to take advantage to what teams may think he is. And he's got that unique skill set. He's going to continue to learn, right? Coming here in June, and all of a sudden, being thrown into the mix in September means we speak volumes not only of the type of physical capabilities he does, but the how smart he is and how he can handle the playbook.
If everyone stays healthy, would you still consider redshirting him? Like, how does he play 4 games, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one of those I always. Before you'd never want to play freshman. Like, hey, screw it. Now there's this thing called the transfer portal and all this stuff. So, and I mean this kind of half-heartedly. Like, I hope that's an issue in a conversation I get to have 4 years from now with Sutton. Like, hey, man, I'm sorry I burnt your red shirt, but guess what? You're playing at a high level, but that's the reality of it, right? I mean, if a guy is still, hopefully I'm still here in 4 years. Hopefully he's still here in 4 years, and those are the conversations that, man. And so we'll see how it goes. Now, there are some guys you get to the point where you're like, okay, do we play that one game? Is it the bowl game, right? Do you sit them out for that? And so we'll see how that goes. We've also done some guys that get nicked up, right? Hey, when will he come back during the season? Perfect example is a guy like Bryce Edmondson, who played some for us last year as a freshman. And it was this year, hey, when's he come back from his injury? See a guy that you just make this his redshirt year? Because last year he played in 8 games and a lot of special teams. Is this year end up being his redshirt year based off of when he comes back? So kind of see how the season goes. But yeah, it's a unique deal. It's part of that roster management as well.
Since you have 4, what made you choose this to be the debut?
I would like to say, some analytical thing. It was more of truly a gut feeling because I saw what he was capable of at practice. And I just said, okay, here's the time. And I thought, as we talk about the body blows and all that stuff, I said, okay, here's where I think the run game is going to be able to start to expand. But credit to him, he made some guys miss. So it wasn't like we sit there and said, oh, it's just blocked up and the freshman got the plays that he was capable. But he made the thing work and just confidence in him. And he had told me, he goes, Coach, I'm ready. He told me that 2 weeks ago. I said, no, you're not. He told me that last week. I'm ready. And then, Saturday morning at breakfast, he goes, Coach, I'm ready. I said, I think you might be, but I can't promise you that. So just you always want them to prepare like they're starters. And that goes because we know, right, with injuries, the things that occur throughout a college football season, you want those guys to always prepare like they're the starter. And, one of the great things about a guy like Sutton Smith, and we have some other players that do this, if you ever come out and you get a chance, when you guys do get to see some of the practice, sometimes they actually stand like 20 yards behind the ball. And they may not get a single rep during that period, but he is sitting there going through the play like he's getting the ball. And all he's doing is put himself through the mental paces. This is no physical harm to his body. He's not any more wear and tear. He's not making contact with anybody. But now, okay, What's the protection? Boom, just stepping through. We've got a couple of quarterbacks that take the drops and go through their progression, read, and make sure they point out. And credit to him, right? Because a lot of guys would rather go just take a knee and hang out with their buddies, and then if they get called in, great. If not, they're just going to hang out in the shade. And he's went out there paying great attention to detail, and obviously it paid dividends this Saturday.
So the last couple weeks we were asking about the run game, and you said that you guys could face light boxes, and then we would be praising you about how the run game got back on track. Saturday, you guys faced heavy boxes, got the run game on track, and the passing game was still there. Is that pretty close to the ideal offensive game and balance for you guys moving forward?
I think that part of that is right. I mean, I first admit we would like to establish. I didn't think we blocked really well up front the first half in the run game. You know, we had a missed assignment on pass protection and gave up a sack. But I think we've got to find that better balance earlier in the game. But again, we're going to take what if you watch that number 21, right? He was in the box, and that's why we had some unique schemes that we hadn't shown before to kind of put him, as we call him, an adjuster, into a little bit of conflict. And he was making plays in the run game, making plays in the run game. But as the passing game was opening up, right, we were finding some of those. We talked about Caden in the red zone. I forgot who asked about that as him being a red zone target. And now all of a sudden you're opening up some different seams. Now that guy that's trying to play the run, well, I got to defend the tight end. Now maybe it's going to work more out to find that run game seam. So. And that's a great thing, like I said, going back to being able, Seth put us in the right position to say, okay, hey, if it's an RPO, okay, well, this one now, the guy's out of the way, let's hand the ball off and figure this thing out. So,
Have you considered, I know he's not starting for them or anything now in Texas, have you considered how different things could be if he had been healthy last summer?
I think we could play the what if game with a lot of, I mean, it's, and whether it's guys that are here or move on, you always wish those guys that move on the best, because if I sat there and tried to control everybody that wanted to leave for a variety of reasons, it'd be a long, I'm wasting time. Hey, you got to go somewhere because of that. You talk to them about why they want to leave. But I wish them the best at North Texas other than this Saturday. But it is interesting. You think if he's healthy, but again, credit goes to Seth. I think Seth, we go back on it. I know that, well, did Seth win the job because he was maybe more capable, or was it because Grant was injured? I think it's just one of those perfect combinations of things that occurred in the universe, and then it worked out. And I think we're quite pleased with Seth's progression. And I know Grant's a heck of a football player as well.
How was that process in the spring and then post-spring with him? Was it contentious? How would you describe?
No, Grant and I had always had a great relationship. There's young men that they're no longer part of the roster. I can honestly say that last conversation I had with him was, after practice, all right, see you tomorrow. Sometimes they don't show back up. There's also been people we've removed. Grant was those. Grant and I had adult conversations, sat down, discussed it. I've got a lot of respect for him. He wants to play ball. He's capable. He certainly has proven that. I mean, anybody that watched him, even while I was here, even previously here at Arizona, and in the spring, right, the spring game, he played fantastic and did some really good things. And he's a top-of-the-line class act, and I wish him nothing but the best.
When Seth is playing at the level he's playing, it's probably just all in all just easier to stomach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's and that's the quarterback situation is one of those, right? You always, do I make the right decision? And I always like to compare things to just kind of history of the game that I love, that we all love, right? We all love football. You go back, like Drew Bledsoe, and this is a complete different comparison. Some of you guys are going to look at me sideways. Drew Bledsoe gets hurt on a late hit out of bounds. Well, Tom Brady, they weren't sure. Do they move on from him? Is he good enough? Tom Brady goes in, and then it's like, wow, well, we realized what we really had. And that's just kind of the nature of that quarterback position. Did you make the right choice? Did you do that? And we're seeing this ever-changing in that position. I think I'm going to throw a stat probably wrong. 55% of quarterbacks in Division I are transfers, or maybe it's even 55% of the starters are transfers. So did you make the right choice? Last year we knew that there's a lot of risk in playing a true freshman quarterback. It was the first time in program history we did that. I'm hoping, like I tell you guys all the time, I'm really putting pushing our chips in with Seth. That development that he occurred last year playing those games as a true freshman, it wasn't always pretty. He played at a very high level. Now we're going to see, okay, man, he's playing better game in and game out, and we hope that, as a true sophomore, we're going to see him continue to improve. So,
How do you sum up the level he's gone to the last 2 games? 800 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers.
he's been He's been dynamic. Well, I argue that he did put the ball on the ground twice. I let him know that actually 3 times. So we've got to fix that. We can't be putting the ball on the ground because to me that's a turnover in my own mind as I talk with him. But he's great. You know, the conversations that he's able to now have on the sideline in game are light years ahead of what it was last year. You know, into 3 games last year, I'd say, what happened there? Blank stare on his face. Like, what play are you talking about? What, you know, now he can go back and has great memory recall of, yes, this is what happened. Here's where the safety was, or coach, you know, I saw this and that's why I did. Okay, good. And we can have those coach-like conversations about what we saw, and he's able to have great conversations with Coach Cramsey about those things. So his progression, his development is every single week in year 2. You're going to continue to see it progress, and we got to continue to own the football and be great with that. But it's been a lot of fun to watch him continue to do great things.
When Hennigan and Ganell were battling out, did you foresee at all the kind of production you were going to get the next 14 games from this kid?
You know, you can never bank on, hey, this thing, but I think we saw what he was capable of. And that's one of the reasons why we entrusted him to start as an 18-year-old, as a true freshman, right? You never know, right? You're not going to put in a true freshman and say, okay, he's going to be top of the line. You know, we've just played a 6-year senior, and you see what they're capable of. You play a guy like Will Rogers, you see those guys that are in the systems, you see what they're capable of. We knew that Seth has great potential. He hadn't even scratched the surface of what he's capable of. That's what's so great about him is, like, if you ask Seth, like, hey, sure he's playing at a great high level, but are you capable of more? Oh, and he could rattle off 6,000 things. And that's the great thing about him is he understands what he's going to be able to continue to develop upon. To say that I knew that he would be able to do what he's doing, no. And if I could foresee that on every recruit, I'd be doing a lot better, because I think we were us and one other school were his only Division I offers. And so, but yeah, we knew what he was, the intangibles that make him so great, and then being able to tie it in and week out, and he's got to do it at a consistent level. So
After the game, you said one of the things that bothered you was the explosive plays on defense. After watching the film, was that an execution thing, or kind of what went into those explosive plays?
yeah, Frank, it goes back. I still think we're missing too many tackles. And I think, you know, obviously, look, the wide open wheel route, that was a miscommunication, a missed assignment, lack of execution, the 2-point play, you know, where they were able to get to the flat. Put that on me. That's on me as a coach. I got to do a better job putting our guys in the right position. The missed tackles is something that is concerning to me. It truly is. You go back and say, okay, what is it? And does that mean, oh, okay, now you go do more live reps? Well, then putting certain people at risk for injury, because the biggest thing, a lot of us we know, is availability is more important than ability, you know, as the season progresses. And as we look at it and say, okay, what can we do? Can we tackle more bags? Do we need to spend more time on it? You know, do we maybe get the look squad to maybe make some more live periods? And, you know, I sat down with Coach Barton and said, okay, how can we continue to address this? Looking at it, is it certain angles that we're taking? And there's a lot of teachable moments, but I think a lot of that is, you know, some missed tackles, and continue to make sure that we're shoring up the details of this defensive scheme.
You did hold them, I think, like 300 fewer yards than a year ago. And that wide receiver didn't really do all that much. I'm curious, the secondary particularly, we talked a lot about Liddell. How are those other guys doing? It seemed like was Ruben on the wide receiver a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, you compare, you know, this year's game to last year's game, you'll say, well, last year you guys were saying, Ryan, what's going on with the passing defense? And I was like, I was sweating when you guys were asking that question last year, and hopefully I was not having to do that as much. But yeah, credit to the rest of the secondary. Look, was it a perfectly clean game? No. And it's anytime you're out there on an island. Greg Rubin played a fantastic game. I think Davion Ross really, really played well. You know, he's a young man. You know, Evan, I know you talked about the transfer. He's a guy that doesn't get a lot of credit. I mean, he was Davion's been fantastic, and you know he got the true start there, 4 corner opposite of Greg. You got to see Julian Burnett go in there, who hadn't played a ton for us other than on special teams. So Julian was able to do some good things. And then Josh Hastings got the start at safety as well, and he did some nice things. Really a clean game. Josh wasn't a big stack. You didn't see him maybe because he was, you know, able to just do his job at a high level. So was it perfect? No, we got a lot of things to clean up. But all in all, that was an explosive offense. I'm telling you, I think Arkansas State's going to win a lot of football games.
Speaking of transfers, Skates obviously has anything back the last 2 games. When you were looking at him, I know Cramsey talked about him being an over-the-top guy. Did you guys expect him to be kind of that missing piece to kind of be that, you know, bring more explosion to this offense?
We knew going back to even like the Seth question, we knew what he was capable of, and you see it. And when you get limited film on these transfers, because generally he wasn't going, he wasn't going to leave Iowa State if he had 50 catches last year. He was going to stay in place and be just fine there. But I think we saw some flashes of the things that they were able to do, and we knew he had that explosive tendency to be able to get stretch the field. And then I think it's you hope he grows every week, right? First week, very limited reps versus Mississippi State. Misses the one, and he'll be the first to admit he was probably looking back for the ball a little too long. The next week, one explosive, and then that was kind of it. And then this week we saw him be able to do a few little more things. Again, same deal. He put the ball on the ground, so we chewed his butt out for that. But I do think he is another one of those pieces of added depth, right? And again, I'm not talking – you can never replace Calvin Austin, but, hey, how did we find the depth of variety of guys? You guys saw that Javon Ivory was, out of the game for a little bit. And so now, okay, Joe Skates, you got to step up. Rock Taylor, who had been pretty quiet the first few games, right, goes and makes that dynamic catch, and then the next play another catch. So I think just being able to find those guys that can fill those voids and continue to play at a high level will help us down the road.
And speaking of that, you now have several offensive linemen depart since the spring. Obviously, we just heard about Ira Henry and Devontae Dobbs, I think Brian Houston as well. How confident do you feel about your depth at offensive line, especially with just mentioning the blocking has to improve a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the O-line will always be, and I think anytime you talk about the trenches, you're always worried about the depth, especially at this level. And, I go back to, I remember in my days in the NFL, it was hard to find 5 good O-linemen, right? And in college football, you hope you can have a rotation of maybe, 7 or 8 that you feel comfortable with. I feel like we're right there. We got guys that we feel like we can trust to get in. Kylan Pounder started the first game at left tackle, went out with an injury, right? Continue to bring him along. He's a very talented redshirt freshman. We got some other guys. You saw Braxton Alford went in there for Jonah Gamble. It seemed like they were able to produce without skipping a beat. So feel good about the depth. Got to keep developing as the season goes on, even if they're not necessarily in the starting lineup.
So you feel pretty good about it, even though 3 linemen have been going, you still feel good about the depth you do have, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
Kylan, how's he doing at this point?
He's doing well. Yep, he's doing well.
Still day to day?
Yep.
Ron, what is it about Gabe Rogers that has allowed him to kind of prosper this season?
We always knew Gabe was a fantastic athlete. I mean, it goes back to 3 years ago when we returned the kick versus Navy. Everybody said, who is that guy? And, he came here. We put him at defensive back. And just kind of one of those things that I always say this, he moves a lot faster and thinks a lot faster going that way than he does going this way. And, him and I sat down after my first season here and kind of discussed where we thought his role may benefit us as a team. And, last year was his first year on offense, and we saw some flashes of him. He's one of those, when he's able to go, he can go. And he's capable. He's shown that he is able to do some explosive things with the ball in his hand, not only as a kickoff returner, but as a receiver. And so, dynamic athlete, very dangerous in space, has great speed. He's a long strider. For a guy who's maybe not 6'2", he's a long strider. So sometimes it's like, oh, wait, how fast? And then all of a sudden you look at the ground he's covering, you say, wow, he can really get up and get out. So I just think the capabilities he's able to have is an explosive player that we got to continue to find ways to get the ball in his hand.
He said last year one of his issues was that he was kind of second-guessing himself on the field. How have you seen that change for him this season?
Absolutely. I think that's like with anybody that's, right, really last year's first year as an offensive player. And so learning the system, and then be able to process and play at a fast level. It's kind of like a quarterback, right? The first year you're learning the system and trying to now I understand the system completely. Now I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm not sitting there slowing myself down. Oh, wait, was that a cover 2? Oh, it was a cover 3 in the middle of field closed. Now I'm supposed to do this with my route. It's just happening quicker. And a guy that's that fast, right, now all of a sudden you're going to be able to see that put on tape day in and day out. And it's been great for him. And you're exactly right. When he doesn't have to think, he's a hard guy to guard. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.